Well, what's up, Red Letter leaders? We are getting ready to get started with our webinar for today. We're going to help you write your first or next book, depending on if you've written one already or not. And so I'm really grateful that you are joining us. We'd love to know who you are, where you're watching from. And so let us know in the chat what your name is, where you're watching from. And also today, as you come into the room, we've got a poll question that is live that we'd love for you to answer. Have you ever wanted to write a book? Yes, no, maybe, or I already have. So go ahead and answer that poll question. After answering the poll question, let us know in the chat what your name is, where you're watching from. And how about this? I bet that many of you that are here today are here because you've at least got a little bit of an idea or maybe a title on what your book idea is all about. So let us know in the chat what that book title, that idea might be for you. So again, thanks so much for joining. I see there are people, as I'm looking at the attendees, that are getting in. So I know the technology's working, which is always a beautiful thing. But who are you? Where are you watching from? And then if you've got a book idea, what is it? What is it that God is putting on your heart that you want to write about? We'll get into the content here in just a couple of minutes. As you are coming in as well, this great day. It's a beautiful day here in Omaha, Nebraska. I hope it is where you are. I wanted to tell you as well about our very next webinar. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well on January 8th. I can't believe I'm saying the year 2024 already. But I'm bringing back a friend of mine, Pastor Mark Schultz. He led a webinar with us last year that was just very, very, very helpful. And so Mark Schultz is going to join. We're calling that webinar Building Bridges of Acceptance, a webinar for pastors on loving the LGBTQ plus community. So mark your calendars, January 8th, noon to 1 Central Time. If you're a part of our Red Letter community, you'll see emails about that. But mark your calendar now. So awesome. I see Andrea watching from Florida. I see Chesley. What's up, Chesley? The Pastor's Digital Playbook, the new rules to lead in the digital age. Yes, please. Will you write that? I want to read that myself. John from Missouri, a couple of book ideas. Zach from Jackson, Michigan. It is great to have you guys with us today. We're going to get started here in just a minute. But really grateful to have you in the poll. Go ahead and answer that question. Have you ever felt like you wanted to write a book? Yes, no, maybe. I already have. That's going to be really great. So, hey, stay tuned to the end. I want to tell you guys about something I'm doing for this group at the very end. If you're around, I want to tell you about something that's coming up real soon that might even help you a little bit more on this journey for you to write your book. I see Brenda from Michigan, 30-day devotional for kingdom entrepreneurs. Come on, I love it. Is it Doey from Knoxville, Tennessee? Welcome to the Red Letter Leaders webinar for the month. All right, so this month, you're going to be hearing me a lot, but to liven it up a little bit, I thought I would bring in my very good friend. His name is Chris Johnson. He helps me co-host the Red Letter Disciple podcast, and he always makes me nervous about the stuff he has up his sleeves. And so I thought, why not a little bit of suspense and mystery on December's webinar. I know it's a crazy busy month for church leaders and pastors, so thanks for joining, Chris and everybody. All right, Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Zach, I remember the first time I wrote a book. You might have heard of it. It was The Purpose-Driven Life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I sold millions of copies of that. But it's not about me today, Zach. It's about these folks and trying to help them move something from an idea to printed. Zach, how did it feel the first time that you held your own book in your hand that had gone so many months from like thought to typing every day? How did that feel? Just tell me about that. What was the feeling when you unpacked that first box?
Oh man,
it's Zach Zender, author.
Yeah, it's so fun, and it's like Christmas morning when you know like your first book is coming, and obviously I think people understand like I have never I'm going to use this analogy. I've never birthed a child. I hear that's a really, really difficult thing but it's something that you carry with you for a while, that finally you get to see. And I think for me, a book is similar in that sense, not as painfully physically hard, but it's just something that you carry for a while, that when you finally first see it, feel it, touch it. This was my first one, Red Letter Challenge. And I still remember like the smell that I had from the book, and like just the feeling of getting it is really exciting, because for me, I actually am way more, I'm not naturally a writer. I never really grew up thinking I would be one. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone, or at least it was in the past. But what I do love is I do love a finished product. And so for me, that was just so fun to see, like, wow, there was nothing. And in the end, there was something. That's really cool. So it's like Christmas morning, man. It's fun.
And before we really get into the serious questions and help folks take an idea to something that's actually printed and have that Christmas morning experience, can we just be honest for a second here? How many books have you written?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So 4 that I would say that I've written that are my titles. I've co-authored 4 additional, which are the kids' versions, but my wife, Allison, has really taken the lead on those. And then we've also got 2 or 3 ebooks that are smaller in size, obviously, than a printed book, that still a lot of work went into, but not I would say the work of the printed books. And so depending on how many of those you count, but I count at least 4, though. How about that? 4 that have got my name on it that I've sort of championed. Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that you're completely out of ideas at this point and you're just farming for the next book? Is that what we're doing here today?
Exactly. That's why I'm wanting people to put their ideas in the chat, whichever one I like. And like, that's the one I want to go with in 2024. So
if Zach comes back with a book about digital playbook, Chesley's going to be furious at this point, right? All right. So let's get into it. You posted something on Facebook the other day that I thought was really interesting. You had that really nice picture where you kind of like are crossing your arms, and you wrote something, and your professor in college said, "Not very creative." And I thought that was interesting because I find you to be quite creative. But that kind of hung out in your head for a while. Like, you allowed the enemy to like basically claim that you are not a very creative person. So I disagree with that. But so with that kind of baggage and stuff, when did you know, like, when did the switch hit that you wanted to actually try this and be an author?
Yeah. For me, it was never something I intended or sought out. And so that's what's interesting about my particular story. And to give a little more context on what you just mentioned, it was a paper for a creative writing class that I submitted in college. And I'll be real with you, my work ethic in college was like, just get the job done. And it wasn't always my finest work. And so, he wrote not very creative about a paper that I had written, but I had turned those words from not very creative on a paper into you're not a very creative person. And that's really a lie from the enemy, because I don't believe that either. I've looked back at my story enough to see that actually, no, we're all creative in our own way, but I'm like very creative, and that's a good thing. And so when did I know I wanted to be an author? I never really did. And so that's what's unique about my story. And part of the reason why I want to help others is because if I can do it, you can do it, right? Anyone can do it. And so my first book, Red Letter Challenge, it started with just an idea back in 2011, actually, that I wanted to help my church get out into the community and do the words of Jesus. And so I wasn't planning to write a book. I wrote a series of blogs, 40 different blogs that were quick devotions. And from there, it just sort of was a 7-year process for me, because there was no process. But there were enough steps that happened along the way that by about year 5, I realized, my goodness, I'm about 70%, it feels like, of the way to like a finished, published product. So I might as well finish. And so at that point, I had gotten so much momentum just kind of through dumb luck would be one way to say it. Spiritually, I think that's not the right words, because I see that as God sort of putting things in my life to kind of force me to do the next step, even if I didn't even know I was doing it. So 7 years was the first book, and after releasing it, for me it was like I never planned on doing this. So like, cool, God, I'm done with this. I'm going to get back to lead pastor full time, but God wasn't done with the idea, and that's when churches started picking it up. And so for me, it was going with sort of God's anointing and churches having a great experience with our 40-day challenge. That maybe God has more for me to write, and not just for me to write, but my wife Allison, who is naturally a writer and actually loves to do it, has provided an outlet for both of us to do that. And our first book gave us the next 5 ideas. So don't worry, those who put in your ideas. We got 2 more to write before we steal anybody else's ideas. So, yeah,
that's good. So you have basically the outline made. It's not like you went into this saying we're gonna write a book at this point. It kind of naturally happened over the 7 years. And so with that, I feel like 2 points I have right now. Like as a pastor, I'm constantly looking for content. And so things that like the digital playbook, right? That makes a lot of sense. How to lead in the digital age. I think every pastor wants to know how to do that. But with that being said, I also think that a lot of pastors and church workers have a lot of ideas. And the joke is, so many times, how can we make this go from idea to actual fruition, right? And so what stops people, Zach, from writing their own book?
Yeah, to me, and this is, I've got kind of 7 tips I outlined. So this one would kind of go into some of those hurdles. But for me, I think what stops most people are psychological and practical hurdles. And that's what I want to help people bust past, the psychological and the practical hurdles. And so for me, the first hurdle and even the first tip of writing your own book is a psychological one. And it's this: believe that God has given you a powerful God-given voice. So believe, and I'll paste these in as we go so people can focus in on what we're saying. So believe that you have a God-given voice that's powerful. This is one I've had to really grow in and develop. Because again, I never planned on being a writer. And so when your career or your identity, at least from a job perspective, has the word author, like you have to believe that your voice is powerful. And so the verse that's given me a lot of confidence that I think can give others confidence is Revelation 12:11. And I've been in a series, by the way, preaching on Revelation, and I'm just in love with this book that I've always avoided. But Revelation 12:11, it's a verse that says they triumphed over him, that's the enemy. So we'll triumph over the enemy by 2 things: by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. And so when you combine your voice, your story, your testimony to the blood that Jesus has already spilled for you, like that's how we're going to make progress in this world. That's how we're going to plunder the enemy's camp. That's how we're going to take back what is God's and be a part of that with him. And so the first tip and the first is like, get over that psychological hurdle and believe that you do have a God-given voice that is powerful. Believe that you do have a story. You do have an idea. You do have something that would help somebody else in this world. And I love to speak specifically to leaders and pastors, Christian, potential Christian authors, because that's the unique piece that we have, is like God's going to be at work as we share his story, the blood of the Lamb, and we share how ours is connected to it. So that's a huge one right there.
And it was a huge uphill battle for you, because up to this point, you hadn't ever read a book. Is that right?
I mean, I read like a few, like, no.
Okay. All right. So first step, you believe that you have a God-given voice that's powerful. And that's overcoming, as you said, the psychological thing. I think self-doubt, that's the way that the enemy works in a lot of us, right? And I was remember our Red Letter Disciple podcast? There was an episode where we spoke to that pastor, and he said the average human being has 60,000 thoughts a day. Yeah. And that 48,000, 80% of our thoughts are negative. And that 80% of the negative thoughts are not the first time that we thought that.
Right.
So that's how the enemy is working. And so like you get this idea that could advance the kingdom, and then all of a sudden you have this negativity like flushing into your head, like, oh man, I've never done this before. How am I going to do this? I'm not, so I love that the first step is psychological. Believe that you have a God-given voice that's powerful. Perfect.
And it's really, it comes down to identity at the end of the day, right? That if we're in relationship with the God of the universe, like we are a son or a daughter of the King, and he has created us in this world, all of us, to be creators. If we are made in his image, all of us are creators. And so believing that you are one, that you have a story to tell. Now, is there more effective ways to tell your story? Can you grow in your craft? Can you bring people along in the journey to help you? Like, yes, all of that stuff we'll talk about and get into the practical, but just like ministry, we want to make sure that what we're doing, any career, any vocation of a Christian, that it's coming out of the overflow of our relationship with God. And so that's where the idea, that's where it all stems from, that I actually do have what it takes, because I am a child of God, and I am made in his image. And so I am made to create, and I'm made to believe that I have a voice.
Okay. We've jumped the psychological hurdle. We now believe that we have God's given voice that's powerful. But what's next? What do I do?
Yeah, good question. And this is where I think, as I'm talking to mostly church leaders and those in the space, would be to clarify your controlling idea. And this is where pastors and church leaders, we have advantages. We have a major advantage, is that we are, most of us, every week, or at least multiple times, multiple Sundays a year, creating new content through these things called sermons, sermon series, messages. I think, Chris, you've joked before that the only two organizations that are creating new content every week are the church and WWE.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Even like comedians. I love comedians, but a typical comedian, they will work hard on their craft to have one like tour-worthy show every 1 or 2 years.
Right.
We are coming up with new stuff every single week. And so this is where I think we may have an advantage, is that you probably, and even if you're on this webinar, you likely already have your controlling idea. What I mean by controlling idea is essentially a theme. What is the theme? What is the real problem that people are asking, that your answer can be relevant and helpful for them? So what is your controlling idea, and clarifying that? I will put a caveat. I think that there are certain sermon series that you preach that for pastors and leaders that like you just feel and know like God is up to something in this. Mm-hmm. But I also agree, like not every sermon series needs to be a book. But there may be every 2 or 3 years, like one sermon series that like you got really wrapped into as you were preparing and rehearsing and delivering, that your people really like leaned into more. And like that right there, there's something there about that. And so that's where we may have an advantage. What I do, and I've had this practice, and it's been super helpful for me, that you don't have to do this, but as a person that prepares sermons and puts a lot of time and hours into it, I actually fully write out my manuscripts. So I've got hundreds and hundreds of sermons that have, a 4,000 to 5,000 word count. That again, not everything is going to be made into a book, but if I'm ever like, you know what, there may be something more to this, I've got a really good head start. And so clarifying the controlling idea is a big one.
Let me ask you this. So when you were doing Red Letter Challenge, what would you say that the controlling theme or the controlling idea was?
Yeah, great question. So for me in that one, I would say in my 40-day challenges, I kind of have two. I have a primary one and then a secondary one that's really important. So my primary controlling theme in the 40-day challenge series that we've written is I want to help answer real spiritual problems by telling people the answer is always look to Jesus. So by looking to Jesus, we will find the answer. So that's the controlling theme in Red Letter Challenge. The secondary one is it's a book about following Jesus. And so I want to get real practical on how do I help people follow Jesus. And I found in our books, we always look for 5 different themes or principles or targets to hit. And so once I want to look to Jesus for the answer. And for this particular book, the question we're solving is, how do I follow Jesus? Then there's 5 themes. And from there, we got the outline. We're ready to go. So that's what is difficult, though, because even in my books, like, so to bring people up to speed, Red Letter Challenge was our first one. It's about 5 targets for how to follow Jesus: being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. Those are the 5 ideas for the next 5 books that Allison and I had. And we've now got 3 of them: being, forgiving, and serving, ready to rock. So our next 2, you know what they are. Don't steal, giving challenge, or going challenge. Those are ours. But I'll be real with you. So in serving challenge, the last one we wrote, I had a really difficult time like locating. My controlling idea was I want to look to Jesus to try to help people serve like Jesus. I had a hard time finding what those 5 aspects or like what the anchor text would be. And so it took me a while. And so that's what I say about clarify the controlling idea is it can't be rushed. It's got to be prayed about and thought about, reflected on, probably researched and read and stewed and talked, to certain people you trust about. But once you have it, you have it, and you're ready to go. So
when I was in sales, they always talked about an elevator speech, like talk about the product that you have and have it so condensed why somebody should have it. You could get in an elevator and explain it succinctly in a short elevator ride. Like when you talk about controlling idea for a book, it almost sounds like that. Like, hey, this is my idea, enough to get some other people excited about it. And you're, of course, yourself excited enough about it.
Exactly. And Chris, real quick, I didn't mention, I started an offer. If you're like, what do your books look like? How can I understand more? We're happy to give a free copy to pastors and church leaders. And so if they go on the offer side, on the right-hand side, they can grab the link and then they fill out their name, address, a couple other minor things. And we'll mail you a book because we want you to see what this could look like. If you've never had one of ours, feel free to do that. So
what if I want 100 free books?
No. One. And for you, Chris, you've got all mine. So yeah,
that's true.
Your emails go right to our spam. So that's fine.
I wondered what Andrea, she never gets back to me. All right. So you believe that you have a God-given voice that's powerful. You clarify your controlling idea. And okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. All right. Now this must be where the pen hits the paper at this next step. Step number 3, talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah. What I say, get it on paper, map it out. So for me, an idea is an idea, and it's not real unless I put it on paper. And if putting it on computer is at the same, it's similar. But for me, I just prefer, for whatever reason, on these big things in life, for me, when I put it on paper, it feels a little bit more cemented in than just a lot of my random thoughts I might throw on a computer. And so after I've got my controlling idea and I believe that God's given me a voice, I want to then map my project out. And this is where we've understood and grown and learned a lot over the years. I didn't know how to do this at the beginning. It was, like I said, a 7-year process in the first time of where we were all over the map and we weren't even sure. But for now, what I like to do is I'm a big football fan. Chris, you know this. And so I like to map mine out like a football field where I've got one end zone that's start and one end zone that's finish. And so you can see that this is my giving challenge football field. We've found that a comfortable space and time for us to come out with products that we believe in, that we've worked hard in, is about 2 years. And so our goal, we just came out with Serving Challenge October 2023. Our goal is to have Giving Challenge ready to go by October 2025. And so then we work backwards from that. If we know we got to go 100 yards, what does that look like for us to do the 100 yards? And we know what that's like on our side because we've done it now 4 times. But this is where I think a lot of people need help is how do you map it out? What does it take? What we found in our world is writing a rough draft, that might get you to the 40-yard line, but you've still got 60 to go. And there's a lot of drafts. There's a lot of editing. We include other things in ours, like videos and sermons. And so that may be a little bit more advanced for some folks. For some folks writing the rough draft, that you may have crossed midfield and maybe even, you got 40 yards to go. But for us, we've got a lot of other extra resources, but we understand what it takes. And so if people could see this, and we can send out later an image of it, about every 10, we have every 10 yards mapped out. And then over here, I've got my dates on when I want to do those things. And so our first 10 yards is a 6-month process. That's what we're in right now. That's my reading and researching mode, where I've got a couple of ideas of where the giving challenge could go, but I'm not 100% yet. I want to make sure I've got on here that I've read or researched at least 30 sources. In this 6 months, I want to come up with the controlling theme, the controlling idea, and hopefully outline the book and maybe even write the introduction. If I get that done in the next 6 months, I'm well on my way to having Giving Challenge ready to rock in October of 2025. And so get it on paper, map it out, and start drawing it out. And if it's not drawn out perfectly, that's okay. But the more you put on it, the more you're going to feel led to tackle, to take care. Yeah, exactly. And Chris, this is in my backpack. It will be in my backpack the next 2 years. By the end of the 2 years, this thing's going to look really haggard, and it's going to have some wear and tear. I look at it, I reflect on it. It's in my subconscious, even as every day I walk with it in my backpack. And so that's a huge piece for me, is what does it look like then for you to map out what your book could look like?
So do you ever get to the 20 and fumble like the Nebraska Cornhusker football team?
That was mean. They did lead the league, Chris, in turnovers. Of all 130 teams, they were 130th in turnovers.
That's
given
right. My beloved Hawkeyes were number 133 in offense. So I don't know. All right. So here we go. You've mapped it out. Your next step sounds kind of I guess that was the calendar it out, right? With the map it out.
Yeah, it goes with it. So yeah, map it out first. So like, what do I need from start to finish? Like, what are the things I actually have to do? And then I talked a little bit about it, but yeah, let's talk about calendar of what it looks like to slot in the time. For me, it's always, starting with the end in mind and then moving back and what I need to do to accomplish that. But this, Chris, I would say is the most under-celebrated skill in book writing is you have to calendar, you have to schedule it. And I mean that not just from big chunks of like, I want to do my writing here, I want to do my second draft here, I want to do my third draft here. Not just that, that's important to put down, but like actually putting in your calendar on your phone, for me, it's 2 to 3 hour time chunks, a certain amount of those, and as many, if I can, consecutive days as possible to really get momentum going, because I don't want to get out of rhythm. If I get out of writing rhythm for more than a week, like it takes me some time to re-enter into it. It's like working out at a gym where if you've been away for a while, like it's hard to get that mojo going. So I want to go with the mojo. And I've done this differently. I've got 2 boys that now are 12 and 16. So you have to figure out, like, there's work and career, there's family, there's your own faith. Like there's a lot of things at play here. And so you have to figure that out and make it happen for you. And I really learned about calendar management from Carey Nieuwhof and his At Your Best masterclass. And it really helped me see the importance that if this is important for me to do, and it's going to help somebody else, like in the end, like I need to put this on my calendar, because if I don't, especially as a pastor, like, trust me, people will take my time. And their things will be urgent and their things will be important. And unless I've got it in my calendar, you blocked, I won't get to it. So this is not something you can just kind of accidentally, haphazardly make happen. And so we've grown in this area a lot over the years. Again, because I was full-time pastoring, writing my first couple of books, there were a few times where I had to schedule like 3 or 4 days away, myself in a hotel room, just to like get momentum going. Because I could not in my everyday operations figure out how to do this. And then eventually I got smart and I started doing little chunks But that's exactly what we do now. Is a good chunk for me is 2 to 3 hours. It's about all my creative bandwidth can do for a day. And for me, if I'm writing 40 days, 40-day challenges with an intro and maybe a conclusion, that's 42. I need to calendar in 42 3-hour chunks. I'd like to do that if I can in a 2-month period, 60 days. So I can have a couple off days, or if I'm away for a couple of days, no worries. I don't want to get out of the rhythm though with that first draft. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think it's tough because not only are you, like you laid out, not only are you a father and a husband, you also work at a church, but time can slip away very carefully. And so what I hear you saying is you're almost treating this like an appointment with yourself, where you have to sit down and get it done, or you're not going to get it done.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Okay. So then we've done that. We've mapped it out. We've calendared it out. Talk a little bit about what kind of goals you set during those 2 to 3 hour writing blocks. Like, I'm assuming, just knowing you and how driven you are, that when you sit down for 3 hours, you have a goal when you get done.
I do. You're right, Chris. I put it in there. The goal would be set a word count goal. What word count do you want to get to? Here's the truth. And I know this is super basic. That's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, you're not hearing stuff from me today that's like intellectual and way over your head. You're hearing really practical things from a pretty simple, practical guy. And so here's what I want to say. Every book starts with 0 words. 0 words.
Whoa.
Yep.
What?
And every book ends up becoming a lot of words. And so set a word count goal. A book with no graphics, and 50,000 words, going to be close to 165, 180 pages. I don't know how long your story is. I don't even know that you need to know, like, at the end, I want to get to 60,000. But what I would say is when you sit down to write for a day, those 2 to 3 hour chunks, set a word count goal. And so for me, my word count goal is somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 words. That's kind of my niche.
In 3 hours?
Yeah. And so it's what, it's like 2 pages on Microsoft Word. It's not a lot. Okay. When you think about it. And in some days, I set 3 hour chunks and it comes to me super easy, and it may only take me 30 to 45 minutes. In other days, it's like, man, it was a slog and I got 1,000 words done, but they're not good. but I got my goal of the word count. And here's what I want to coach people. Remember, it's called a rough draft because it's rough. It's not meant to be perfect. The main purpose of the rough draft is just to get words on paper, that as you get words on paper, you will start recognizing probably subjectively what's good, what's not good, what may need help. And also, like, you go in with an idea of here's what it could look like, but then as you get into it, you kind of see, but I like where it's going here. And so anyway, it's not going to be a perfectly good, like, everything ready to go draft because it's a rough draft. But think about this. For my case, if I set aside, if I've done the research and I've done the reading and I've got the outline and the controlling idea, which is not nothing, that's a lot. And then I'm ready to write. It legitimately probably only takes me 2 months to get 0 words to a 50 to 60,000 word count, which is where ours end up landing. That's not that much time in the grand scope of things.
But you put a lot of time in before researching and doing
exactly. So we'll do again, depends on the work, but we'll do six months plus to get ready for that. But when it's actually writing time, we're ready to go. And that's where I think, like, a lot of people that are listening on the webinar right now, like, you probably already got your controlling idea. The desire to write a book usually comes with an idea of what the book would be. And maybe you've done a lot of research or writing, or maybe it's your own personal story, so there's not a lot of research. But anyway, what I'm saying is the actual words growing to an actual word count that's a full book doesn't actually take that long, but it's still rough, and we're not done. But set a word count goal, and if you've calendared it out and you're being faithful with that, and you're getting that word count goal, great. I know that, like, I think Daniel Pink is a New York Times bestseller. His word count goal is 400. It's super tiny, super small. So anyway.
Hey, we got a question from Tim.
Yeah.
He says, Zach, maybe I missed this, but when you're spending 2 months writing 50,000 words, are you also writing weekly sermons? Great
Great
question,
question.
Tim.
Yeah, great question, Tim. I've done it both ways. And truthfully, I am a pastor at a teaching pastor at a church that has the honor to get to preach. But I'm considered part-time here. I preach about 18 to 20 Sundays a year, and they'll usually stack those together. So I might do 4, 5, 6 in a row and be off 10 to 12. So in my world, how we have it worked out now is likely in the 10 to 12 where I'm not preaching in a row. That might happen once or twice a year. That's when I'm probably going to be cranking out the word count. I'm probably researching and reading alongside, no matter what season it is. But I'm usually doing that. I would say if you are writing sermons, Tim, and it's something that you have to figure out in your, one of those 40, 50 sermon a year type of churches, you probably can't do 42 time chunks in a period of 60 days. But could you do 2 in a week?
But time out.
Yeah.
But time out. You were in
Yeah.
Florida when you wrote Red Letter Challenge,
Yep.
and you were preaching 40, 45
Yep.
times a year. So talk about that to the working pastor who's, cranking out 40 to 50. I think you were just going to touch on it.
Yeah, I would say God bless you, man. There's a reason why we've repositioned our lives to be able to write more, to free up us to write more. I think it's possible if you've got a book idea or, a couple of book ideas over a longer period of time for you to do that as you do full-time ministry. But I also don't want to put too much pressure and stress on the pastor that says, I'm leading and I'm preaching 50 times a year, and now I've got to write a book too. I think there's seasons, and hopefully what I would suggest is one time in my writing, I did have a sabbatical at the church, and that allowed me that time. And then, my wife chimed in on the comments. A lot of times it is Red Letter Challenge was a sermon. It was a 40-day devotion blogs, but it was centered and wrapped around a sermon series. And so strategically maximizing the sermons that you're writing into the book is definitely a way to help bridge that gap for sure. But yeah, in the early days, the first 2 I wrote as I was full-time pastoring. And again, the 7-year one's it's kind of an outlier because it wasn't really a rhyme or reason. The second one, though, I would say, I did several weekends away or 3 or 4 days away at a hotel room by myself just to get momentum back on my side when I felt like I was losing it.
5-star.
Yeah, and then
five-star hotel.
Not quite. It was pretty basic. So
yeah, it wasn't 5-star.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I did get to eat Taco Bell every night, which is nice. So yeah.
Probably increase the word count. So Allison, I know your wife very well, and just for you, people that don't know her, I don't think she's ever killed 2 birds with 1 stone, figuratively. I think that was just a, statement. Okay.
Clarifying that, yeah.
Yeah. Moving on. I have never written a book, and I'm guessing that the process of writing a book can be a lonely one. Zach, you mentioned times where you had to, check yourself into a half-star resort, barely had running water. Talk about that. How do you find encouragement in the process to not just give up? Because, you're on the 40-yard line on your map.
Yeah.
And, gosh, is this thing ever going to get done? Oh, we're going to get to Carrie Ann's question too. Carrie Ann, that is a really good question. We're going to hit that at the end. I was going to talk to Zach about that. So hold up.
Cool. Yep. So for me, this is the 6th one. We got 2 more to go. And I'm borrowing this one from Donald Miller. He led a webinar years ago that was around this same sort of psychological hurdles and some other things. And so this is from him. Find some coaches and cheerleaders to help you along the way. So what I mean by this is, and it is it's you and a computer a lot of times. And there is that side where, and certainly you can send out some emails or questions or talk to people as you're writing. But what I like to do is I like to get everything rough drafted out. And then I like to do another revision just myself. And at that point, I usually feel comfortable and confident enough to send to some people to help review my product or to review the draft. So this is what I do, and it also helps with quality control. I usually have between 8 and 12 family and friends that will read my drafts. And what I mean by coaches and cheerleaders, I will have them rank each of my days. If you're not writing a daily thing, but a chapter thing, maybe each of your chapters or sections, I will have them rank them 1 to 5 using the Goodreads scale. So everybody's looking at the same scale. And then I will get back their reviews. I'll actually tabulate their numbers in a spreadsheet and average out what each day is. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by coaches and cheerleaders, there's a couple that I invite that I know are just really, I was going to say negative. That may not be the right term, but they're going to push me. They're going to challenge me. They're not going to give me high numbers because they want to get more out of me. Those are my coaches. I need them. I actually desire to get better in the next draft. And so I want to know what it is that I can change. I also, though, invite a couple of cheerleaders along the way that, you know what they're going to do? They're going to put 5s by every single one of mine because they're so proud of me. One of them's on this webinar. It's my mom. She is always the highest number average ranking. But you know what? If I ever see a 4 from my mom or, God forbid, a 3, that's total garbage. I know I got to work over that devotion. So, but what I mean by that is you need people to drive you, but you also just need people to say, great job. This is so good. I love this. You're amazing.
Mama Z would never give you a 3. Come on.
There's maybe 1 or 2 that she has. But so that's what I mean is find a couple of people that are going to just tell you the truth. They're going to challenge you. And then a couple people that are just going to just thumbs up everything and you'll feel really good about that. And so that's what I mean by coaches and cheerleaders. Kind of even fits with the football field analogy as well, of forming a team around you. And then bonus tip on how I do it, Chris. So I mentioned if I got 10 people that are reviewing each day, and I put that in a spreadsheet, very easy to find, like the average. If there's a devotion or a day challenge that I write that comes in ranked really high, for me, if I see anything collectively a 4.3 or higher, out of 5, I don't touch that. That's done. That feels really good. They maybe have like 7 or 8 of those, just like I'm good. And I also will then use those same ones in our marketing. I might turn one of those into a blog. I might turn one of those into a podcast in some other fashion. I might put those specific days in my 100-page sample that I will give out to others as they want to see more of it. And so it really helps actually on the marketing side of the book that you've got 10 people that have already told you this is good as is. And it's like, that's awesome. I want to use those and remember those and send those out for people. Does that make sense?
Just out of curiosity. Yeah, that makes sense. Just out of curiosity, because I know you remember this. What's the lowest score you ever got on one of your devotionals?
Yeah, it's somewhere, and it's good. It's Goodreads scale, which is kind of a tough scale. Like 5 means like amazing. 4 means like really good. 3 means good. 2 means average. So I think somewhere in the right around the 3 range, we've gotten some of those. If anything for me comes under, I think it's a 4. I know I've got work to do.
That's interesting.
3.5 or less. I've either got a lot of work to do, or I might need to completely scratch that one and just go forward. If it's at like a 4 or a 4.1, but I think it's a 5, I might not touch that either because I get some subjective say in it as well. So it really does help me know, though, like after I get that back, for me, my third. So again, I've rough drafted it. I've gotten my second draft. I send it out. I get all that back. My third draft is where I spend the second most amount of my time outside of the rough draft. That's where I try to take all those numbers and make them all better.
That's awesome. Well, that's a really good plan. So you make your third draft, you send it out to people, you get the scores, but here's your final step, and I think this one's really interesting. Talk about your last step.
Yeah, so it's put the kind of continuing the analogy, put the reps in, reward yourself along the way. For many, like again, it is about putting the reps in. It's just about being diligent.
You have treat yourself day. You have treat yourself day. That's what you have.
Exactly. So you'll notice. Actually, I haven't put it on this one yet. But on my map or on my football field, it's usually every 20 yards. I still got to do it. I just wrote this the other day. I'll put a little asterisk by the 20 yards. And what that asterisk means is when I get to the 20-yard line, I get a reward. I get a treat, which is fun. Some people, I know Donald Miller likes this one too. Some people actually buy their gifts in advance and wrap them up because they've already spent the money. And so they better like get it because they already spent it. Others may not go that far, but they might plan out something. And here's what I would say. Everybody has their own sort of whatever that means treat. But I would say like have the rewards escalate. So you're not getting like your best reward at the 20-yard line. Like, put the Hawaii vacation or that may be way too extreme. I've never done that one. But put the biggest one at the top, like, because for a lot of you, and I would recommend, like, for a lot of you, this probably isn't your career or your income source yet. And so this is just a project. It's something that you don't need to do, but you want to do. And it may not be, so how can you reward yourself along the way and incentivize? I think it's a fun way to kind of just keep going. And if you know that every 20 yards, you got something fun, whether it's an event or something else, I think that's a really great thing to do. So put the reps in and don't be afraid to treat yourself along the way. And by the end of it, hey, that fifth treat should be pretty good. You want to get there because not only do you want to have a book, but you want to get whatever you have for that fifth reward. Yeah.
Okay, Zach, the most popular question of the day. Let's get to it. And I want to ask you this way. I have known a lot of people. There's so many different options when it comes to publishing right now. You got self-publishing, the way you went. I've got a bunch of friends that went right to Amazon, and they're producing books and selling books all over the world, self-published through Amazon. Talk me a little bit through the process. You've got this book, and was there ever any like thought about going out, trying to find a publisher? Talk about your experience with that and what led to self-publishing.
That's so good, Chris. All right, I will answer that question. First, I put a link in the chat. That's my Facebook private Red Letter Leaders group. If you're not a part of that, I'd love to invite you to be a part of that. And the reason is a week from today, this is what I was telling all of you that hung around. A week from today, I'm going to do a live Q&A, December 14th, noon to 1 Central, where I want to answer any of your questions that we don't get to today or any that might develop in the next coming few days. So be a part of Red Letter Leaders. I'm going to answer probably, I can give more specifics at that point. But here's what I would say, Chris. Yeah, one of the things that we've learned as we've kind of grown in this industry is we've networked and we've connected over the last 7 years pretty well. But it hasn't been without pain and without cost, a lot of price, a lot of investment. And so we've had to navigate these waters that are new for us. And that's really what I want to come across in today and at that live Q&A. And in any other way that I can be helpful is I know what it takes to talk to publishers, and I know what it takes to talk to literary agents and how they want to fly you out for a weekend. And it's a 5-figure expense. And it's like, none of us have that. And so I want to be as helpful as I can. So in the publishing space, to your question, there's lots of different routes to go. We actually, at the beginning, did try to get Red Letter Challenge published. And we talked to several publishers, and it was a rejection. No. So it was something that, though, God put on my heart strong enough that we were going to do with or without a publisher. And publishers typically are looking for 3 things. And I actually think this one is the most important. They're looking for platform. They're looking for audience. Anytime you fill out anything from a potential publisher, they want to know how many Facebook friends you have, what's your Instagram following, how many subscribers on YouTube, what's your email list. If you're a pastor of a church, how many attend your church? They want to know all that. And I actually think that's the most important to them. The other 2 things that are important are what is your project? Like, what's your actual idea, your controlling idea, your theme? And then 3, is it good? Like, is it a quality product? And most people say you can have 2 out of those 3 and potentially get a publishing deal. I think you have to have the platform. because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that my controlling idea and theme for Red Letter Challenge was brilliant, not because it's my idea, but because it's God's idea. And yet we couldn't get past the barrier into a publishing deal. And so because of that, we self-published. And wow, am I strong, or am I glad that we did? Because it's all ours. It's on our calendar. It's on our timing. There's a whole lot of red tape you go through with publishers. It's a longer process probably to publish through a traditional route than a self-publisher. There are benefits. There can be benefits to traditional publishing for sure. But I genuinely think that unless you are one of the prominent authors out there that already have a name, that are going to be featured on the catalog or the magazine or the website, you're doing a lot of your promotion and marketing yourself anyway. And so that's why I'm glad we went self-publishing. Another reason that we went self-publishing that I would counsel people to self-publish is if you have a book that you can sell in bulk quantities. That for me is a reason I would stay self-published, because you're not as worried about selling a one-to-one. It's great when that happens. It's great when I sell a book to a follower of Christ. That's cool. But a lot of our marketing goes towards church leaders and pastors, where I will actually full cards on the table. We put that free book for pastors in here because I want to get a free book in pastors' hands. Because I know that if they like it and they want to do it with their church, they're going to come back and probably order 50, 100, 500 copies. So we can be generous, even, and I do believe in generosity, but we also know that that's a really effective marketing strategy as well. And so if you have a book that can be sold in bulk, I would go the self-publishing route, because then you only need a few people to really buy a large quantity, and that way you're not splitting. And honestly, when I say splitting, giving away 90% of the proceeds, to a traditional publisher.
So I guess the downside is if you're going to self-publish and not go through like an Amazon or something like that, where you're buying the book, you've got a lot of upfront costs in the beginning. Whereas if you go through a traditional publisher, you don't have that upfront cost, but you lose out on the royalties in the grand scheme of things.
For the most part, yep. When you say Amazon, like self-publishers can go on Amazon. That's just about creating an Amazon seller account and uploading a new listing once you have an ISBN number. I
had a friend do that just the other day, and he's sold a couple hundred books. So
anybody can do that through self-publishing. If it's a printed book, yes, that it is investment up front. That hopefully, if it goes well on the back end, will be better for you. And you're right. Most traditional publishing deals, what they will do is they will give you an advance. And if you're not a published author already or have a great following, it's not going to be much, but it will be enough, and it will be their product that they will spring the bill for. And then when you sell any books, let's say they give you, let's use round numbers. Let's say they give you a $5,000 advance to write a book. $5,000 sounds like a lot of money, is a lot of money. It's a lot of hours to write a book. So think about that. So let's say though that you get $5,000 to write a book, and what they will do is you may get 10 to 15%. That's typically closer to 10% of the royalties of a sold book from the profit margin. And the first $5,000, by the way, that come of those royalties, that pays the publisher back. So you actually don't see any checks 10 to 15% until they've gotten the first $5,000 back that they invested in you.
And that could take years. That could take years, as Allison brings up.
It could. So, yep.
Okay.
What are the questions we got?
Let's see. Actually, I think we hit them all.
Cool. We got a few more minutes. So if anybody does have questions, let's tackle them. To give you a minute or two to write a question, let me remind you of a couple of things. Again, if you're not a part of our Facebook Red Letter Leaders group, obviously it's a free private Facebook group. I'm going to be in there a week from today. I do want to help you. And so what questions do you have from now until then? You can ask them live on the Q&A on Facebook next week. You can email hello@redletterchallenge.com, whatever questions you might have, and we would love to answer those. And So that'll be a week from today, February 14th, noon to 1 Central. And that'll be in the Facebook group, not on this webinar platform. And then secondly, a reminder that next month's webinar is going to be awesome. January 8th, Mark Schultz is going to be back helping us as pastors and leaders navigating how to do ministry and to really love the LGBTQ plus community. We did a lot of webinars last year. Mark Schultz's was the highest attended. And so we wanted to bring him back because we know it helped a lot of people. And so that's January 8th, noon to 1 Central. Mark your calendars now to reserve the time and then watch for an email or two coming up in future. Cool. What else you got, Chris?
I think that might do it for today, pal.
Cool, man. Well, okay. So last thing, Facebook group, again, next week, a week from today. I would love if some of you, like as homework, I'm hoping that you believe you have a God-given voice, tip 1. I am hoping that you probably have your controlling idea. Some of you even put the title in. So what would it look like from now until a week from now for you to map it out and even come to the live Q&A next week with a little bit of a map and maybe even be ready to share and ask questions? I'd love to look into it with you and help you along your journey. What I want to see is God's people get their unique voices out. There's a lot of books, a lot of authors, a lot happening out there. You've got a unique voice, and anything I or we at the Red Letter team can do to help you, because we've navigated this world for 7 years now. Anything we can do to help you so you don't have to pay $10,000 to talk to a literary agent over a weekend to figure it out. Like, you don't need to do that. We're here for you. We got you, and let's see what God does. Cool? Sweet. With that, are you good, Chris? You want to say bye?
Yeah. Bye, everybody. This was fun. Thanks for joining us. And go get that book printed and give us some more ideas if you don't want to do it, because Zach needs some, Come on.
And hey, join me and Chris, right, for the Red Letter Disciple. Chris, where can they go for that, our podcast?
You gotta go check this out. If you like, or at least can stand us, we have some really compelling podcasts, and we've been doing it now for a few seasons. Some really great episodes. You can check us out on YouTube at Red Letter Disciple, or you can go to wherever you download podcasts and go check out Red Letter Disciple. And man, if you like it, leave us a review, because man, that really bumps us up. Please. Thank you.
Cool. All right, y'all. Merry Christmas. And next time we'll see you in the webinar world, it will be 2024. So Happy New Year and God bless you. Hope your Christmas services go well. Take care.
Take care. Bye.